In my last video, I talked about the new Goblin curse spell coming in the next update. Today, there's two more new cards to talk about. I'm going to be talking about their stats and then getting into a couple games with them. The first one is the Goblin Demolisher. It's a 4 elixir rare troop. It deals 186 area damage, has 1300 hit points. It's going to target only ground units. It has a range of 5, and it's going to charge into buildings too. It deals 465 death damage, has a 1.1 hit speed, and then it has its activation at 50% health. I'll explain what that means in just a second, and its charge speed is going to be very fast. So the first attack that the Goblin Demolisher has is throwing explosive to ground troops, so you can compare it to a bomber. It's going to deal a bit more damage than a princess, but less damage than a fire spirit. However, once he loses half of his health, he kind of becomes a wall breaker, and he rushes towards the nearest building with his remaining health, and he doesn't throw explosives anymore when this is happening. And when he reaches the final target, he explodes, dealing insta area damage, and the damage is the same to towers and troops, which is 465. And the second one is called the Goblin Machine. Now this one is a 5 elixir legendary troop. It deals 135 damage, has 2,598 hit points. Now it targets ground units. The melee attack is only going to attack ground, but it has a rocket which can hit air and ground. And I'll talk about some of the rocket stats in just a second. Its hit speed is 0.9 seconds, and it's going to deal 150 damage per second. So the rockets that it fires have a range of 2.5 to 5 tiles. It deals 588 damage, has a 3.5 second hit time, and like I already mentioned, it can target air and ground units. Both of these attacks can happen at the same time. However, there is a blind range which you can compare to the mortar. So when targets are too close, it's going to be unable to fire the rocket at those. The rocket has area damage with a radius of 1.5 tiles, which is going to be smaller than a regular rocket at 2 tiles. And one other thing worth noting is you are able to activate the King Tower off of the rockets. So when you're using it, you're going to have to be careful to avoid that depending on the matchup and deck you're playing. Alright guys, let's get into a couple matches now with these new cards. So the first game is going to have both the Goblin Demolisher and the Goblin Machine in the same deck, so we can see if they potentially have good synergy together. And also in this deck, it has the Ram Rider in it, because the Ram Rider might end up being a lot stronger now in the balance changes, because the charge time is going to be half as much now, which means on offense especially, she's going to be significantly stronger because you have way less time to react to her. So we have the Goblin Demolisher coming in. It's going to throw dynamite on top of the Tesla there, and as you can see, health bar going down, and now that's under half health, it starts charging towards the tower. And even though you see how it didn't reach the tower, the massive amount of splash it did, how much damage it ended up dealing to the baby dragon and the ice wizard. So even if it doesn't end up connecting to a building, it is still getting a ridiculous amount of value. Ram Rider going to get stopped pretty easily, but you saw her charge significantly less time when she was first played, so curious to see how many interactions change with her. And then the Goblin Curse, which I talked about in the last video, might also end up synergizing well with the Goblin Demolisher as well as the Goblin Machine. So it's just going to be interesting to see with all these Goblin cards in the game. Are they going to fit well together? Are we just now going to be seeing a bunch of decks constantly with them in it, especially if they're very strong? From what I've seen, the Goblin Machine, I think, is stronger than the Goblin Demolisher, at least on first impression. So look at that rocket coming in, and look at that. So rocket now targets the Ice Wizard and the Baby Dragon, and they both went down. I mean, the fact that it deals splash is partly what makes it so broken. The fact that it can hit multiple units at once. So Goblin Demolisher in the opposite lane, it's going to start throwing dynamite on the tower, and then Goblin Machine coming in behind. So Demolisher charges on the tower, Machine coming in on the back end, rocket ends up targeting the tower, and it's just absurd how much damage the rocket ends up dealing. I feel like with these new cards, it almost seems like we're playing Nulls Royale right now. I mean, the cards, I'm not saying they're super duper complicated, but considering they're not a champion, I mean, of course the Goblin Machine's a legendary, Goblin Demolisher a rare, they're, I mean, somewhat complex cards because they have more than one feature to them. And I mean, the Goblin Demolisher ends up having that, bar on its health where it ends up just charging. So it's kind of definitely a very complicated card for it only being a rare. That's my opinion anyway. And then the Goblin Machine, on the other hand, like, maybe it's understandable that's a legendary. And then Curse, of course, amazing against the graveyard. And look at that too. Just, like, what is happening? Like, what is happening? I can say for a fact this Goblin Machine, I think, is probably going to need a nerf. 3 of them down at one time. And for the second game, we're going to be playing, it's a cycle deck now, with the Goblin Machine, basically. So the Goblin Demolisher, you guys saw pretty good, but I think the Goblin Machine is a little better. So what I want to see now is, can the Goblin Machine be played literally in like a cycle deck where you're just trying to get as many of them down as possible? Because that's what happened last game. 3 of them down, and it just absolutely obliterated everything. Like, it's so hard to deal with. So I'm curious how it ends up faring against the Goblin Demolisher, Goblin Machine, where it's the Goblin Machine alone, basically, inside of a cycle deck. Because this is what often happens, guys. Whenever a new broken card comes in the game, I remember at the start, we've seen this with, of course, the Wall Breakers when they first came out, with the E-Golem, just stuff that on release was absolutely busted. Night Witch is another example. You could just run it in a cycle deck or like any random deck where you're trying to get as many down as possible, and it would literally work. So it ends up targeting the tower there, and look at that. I mean, you have to commit so much elixir to deal with it. I think that's the thing that makes it so strong. Not only does the Goblin Machine deal so much damage from the rockets, the fact that it has so much health means it just stays alive for so long. And I'm curious if it's going to end up pairing well inside of beatdown decks. So you might be thinking like, well, it's already kind of a tank, but I feel like because of the rockets and because there's that, of course, there's that blind spot so close up it's not going to end up shooting things. I wonder if it's going to be good inside of heavier things. I don't know if it would fit in a Golem deck. That might be too expensive, but behind, say, like a Giant, for example, or, for example, an Ice Golem, which is in this deck, that's where it could really shine. Evo Skellies, they do end up getting stopped, but it's just, oh my goodness. Like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about these new cards. I think we might end up needing some emergency balance changes pretty soon, at least from the looks of things. But we might end up figuring out ways to counter them, to be fair. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of an overreaction. I don't want to get, I guess, like, too ahead of myself here. But you can see Goblin Demolisher actually being very valuable on defense against those Goblin Machines. And, man, that charge damage it deals is just absolutely ridiculous. I can't even figure out what's the most broken out of everything. I feel like the Goblin Curse still might be the most broken out of everything, as crazy as that sounds, as good as the Goblin Machine looks. I feel like the Goblin Curse, the fact that it's only 2 elixir, the amount of times it can be used in so many situations, and it's like it's never going to hurt to play. Like, sometimes it's going to get more value than others, but it's a type of thing where it's like one Goblin Curse could win you the whole game. So, Goblin Machine coming in here, it ended up going in front of the Ice Golem. So, the Ice Golem is going to be a very good counter, I feel like, to the Goblin Machine, because it's a great way to kite it, and once the Goblin Machine ends up getting close to the Ice Golem, it's going to stop firing rockets on it. So, I feel like, in general, kiting it is a pretty good strategy, or just in general, making sure, however you're countering it, making sure you're playing it right next to the Goblin Machine so it has no opportunity to get a rocket on it. So ranged units, for example, like, are a horrible counter to the Goblin Machine. Like, you cannot just go for, like, a Musketeer, like a Little Prince, and even a flying card. The fact that the rocket hits air and ground, I think, is yet another reason why it is so broken. At least the Goblin Demolisher, at least it only hits ground. So I think that's partly one thing that helps balance it out a tiny bit. But it looks like you're not going to be able to run the Goblin Machine in just a cycle deck here, because you are going to end up getting overwhelmed. So that's a good sign. It's not too busted to the point where you can just get away with running a Goblin Machine cycle deck. But at the same time, I still think it needs some balancing. I still don't know what decks it's going to pair well in, but I guess we have yet to see when the update goes live. And also the Queen Challenge looks pretty interesting as well. I didn't talk about that in this video, but on the TV Royale, you guys might have seen it, where you're going to be able to get tons of rewards, and it might end up being just a game mode, so it might not actually end up replacing the King Tower after all, which might end up being pretty cool, because then people don't have to worry about it being super pay to win. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about these new cards coming to the game. I think they certainly are going to need some balancing, especially the Goblin Machine and the Goblin Curse, but overall, might be pretty exciting to have have 3 new cards coming to the game. Make sure to like the video if you guys did end up enjoying it. Subscribe if you guys are not subscribed already, and let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this update that's coming in a couple days.